I had just had a miscommunication that was completely my fault. So we are going to get her rescheduled for the spring. So I have put together a presentation that I hope will be of use to everyone in the Ascender Familia, including advisors and all of the people who help us run this program. So I'm putting my PowerPoint slides and a PDF of it, and I absolutely encourage everyone to share it out, make it as widely available. I hope that it's helpful. Weird, just one sec. Like, where'd my I will, where is this? Sorry, one sec. I'm just making sure it gets saved in the right place. So I hope everyone is doing well. This week is always kind of a crazy week coming back from recovering from Labor Day, first weeks of school and everything like that. But then, feels long because we had a 4-day work week and now we're back to the 5-day grind. So hope everyone is doing well. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was just some sort of ways that we can extend the work that we do beyond the classroom. I put together this presentation in hopes that it would have some relevance and some good ideas for advisors, for the support staff, for the mentors, for all of the people who support the work that we do, and just wanting to talk about supporting our students as whole people. For those of you who are coming in, hi, welcome. We had a last minute change to the schedule, so I will be talking today and giving the presentation, and we will get Dr. Kantu rescheduled for the spring semester. She said she was sorry to miss it, but it was totally my fault with the miscommunication. So welcome me again, Erin. So here we go. These are general statistics that we know. But working with community college students, we have an incredible student population, but also an incredibly diverse student population. And so from some of the fact sheets that the American Association of Community Colleges has put out just this year, we know that 29% are first generation college students. I have to admit, I was wondering how AACC actually defined that, because that particular number seemed low to me. But we have upwards of 15% of our students who are single parents. I would say that we don't talk enough about the students who are juggling parenting at the same time that they are going to school and juggling the rest of their lives. 4% are veterans. I would venture a guess that in a city like San Antonio, our number of student veterans is probably higher just because of the large military presence that's there. 20% are students with disabilities, 56% are 22 or younger, but then we still serve 44% who could be nearly any age. And that the vast majority of our students work. The fact sheet, which I have given y'all the link to, I put the files in the chat so that you can access them, but I can share them again for y'all who may not have gotten that in the chat yet. There's so many different student populations that converge in our classroom. And so how do we even begin to sort through what they need and who they are and what their goals are and things like that? One approach that I think has been really interesting and innovative is, if y'all are unfamiliar with Dr. Russell Lowry Hart of Amarillo College and all of the different things that Amarillo College has done, it's an Aspen Institute winner, and all of these different things. They have done some really interesting initiatives. And I think that Russell Lowry Hart is probably one of the most innovative community college presidents who's out there right now. But one of the things that I have heard him talk about is his student Maria. Maria is a composite profile of who Amarillo College's typical student is. So she is a mother. She goes to school part-time. She works 2 part-time jobs and all of these different demographics. And the link that I have at the bottom of the slide, which you can look up, gives more information on how they came to this. But the approach of it was to really think about who the typical student is at Amarillo College, and then how you can create services to meet the needs of this person. And I think that Maria, when I've seen Dr. Lowry Hart invoke this student in presentations that he's given, or in talks with the public or stakeholders or things like that, it gives him someone tangible that he can reference, and that he can talk about how services, programs, things like that, decision making has been designed with students like Maria in mind. And part of the messaging that they put up that I think is just so beautiful and so tied to the work that we do here at CTN is in thinking about how you can love a student to success, and how you can really think about the ways that we are serving students and creating opportunities for them, trying to remove barriers where possible. And certainly, the pandemic highlighted just how much our students might be struggling with, in addition to trying to go to school. So this does connect with CTN's work. As you all know, I asked that surveys be distributed. We asked for some demographic information off of this. And some of the things that we have noticed in the past is that, the average age of students is around 19. So they might be more traditional. I use that term very cautiously, but a typical college age for students who have just graduated college or graduated high school and are entering college not too long after. But we know that the range can vary widely. I visited classrooms that had students who were in their 60s or 70s, along with students who were 17 or 18 years old, in the same developmental classroom. We do know that many of our students are identified as Latino, Latina, Latinx, but that they can come from any racial ethnic background. We know that in our program, male or female students tend to outnumber the male students, which is pretty in line with the AACC trends that says that about 60% of community college students nationwide are female. They work on average 19 hours a week or less, which I have to admit, when I got into the data and was trying to come up with a profile for our CTN students, that was something that actually kind of surprised me. That many of our students on average are working about 19 hours or less. And they likely have different familial obligations. That might be working with a family business. I recall meeting an ACC student who was the family translator, or was the translator for her family's business, for instance. They may have care duties, either caring for a grandparent, a parent, a brother, a cousin, or their own child. So we know that there are a lot of time obligations that students have outside of the CTN experience. And so how do we use that knowledge to try to create opportunities to address student needs in a way that increases their likelihood for success in whatever their pathway is for either their academic pathway, their professional goals, et cetera? And so one of the things that we encourage is asking students if they need more information in specific areas. We encourage, say, do you need more information about, and then have a list of student services. And some of these student services, I'm going to go through and offer suggestions for how to connect students with those and how to approach the topics of these particular services. I think that overall, there's ways to sort of address how you might deal with students on the individual level, as well as how you might deal with a whole group of students. I think that, depending upon the topic, trying to connect an individual student can be really powerful, especially if they don't know how to navigate mental health services, or how they get in touch with disability services if there are accommodations that they may be entitled to that they're not able to access yet, or things like that. So there's that, but there's also how can you call in a group of students to get information as a group, so that they hopefully feel like they have the information they need. So we'll go through some different aspects of this, and hope that this generates good ideas. And I do want to say that I see all of this information as completely relevant and applicable to the advisors, to the faculty members, to the directors and the coordinators of these programs. And a lot of this might be stuff that maybe you don't know, or you haven't thought about ways that you can incorporate this into your classes, or your advising sessions, or mentoring meetings, or what have you. The first thing is financial aid. I think that in talking to our students throughout the course of the time that I have been involved with CTN, knowing financial aid, and this doesn't mean knowing the particulars of it, or anything like that. And obviously individual questions should and can be referred to the general financial aid office and things like that. But I think that knowing the basics of financial aid and how students can tap into different grants, different scholarships, how we can think about funding opportunities that aren't just for tuition, but might be for textbooks or for conference opportunities and stuff like that, can be extremely transformative for the work we do. If you want a really, really good primer on financial aid, the YouTube video that I have at the bottom was a CTN webinar that we did about a year ago with Dr. Jaimes of San Antonio College, who has worked for the Department of Education, who has been involved intimately with the financial aid world and in helping connect community college students in particular to financial aid resources. And so I think it is a fantastic primer if you're just unfamiliar with the financial aid system, and how to start connecting students to those opportunities. I think that one thing I would encourage is trying to establish and advertise grant and scholarship opportunities for your program. When I say establish, I actually mean like creating a list, not trying to fund your own opportunities, but to create a list of various opportunities, application deadlines, things like that can help connect students with tuition assistance, textbook assistance, professional development conferences. Something that pre-pandemic we used to try to encourage our colleges to send students to was the HACU conference, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. And our own operations manager, Juan Iga, was a recipient of the scholarship for students specifically to attend the HACU conference, and to be able to travel and to connect with this academic conference that is reflective of the college that he was going to, which was Palo Alto at the time. When you are able to advertise those, I think it just is able to get the information to students, and so they know what's available, they can plan. Oftentimes, if you have students who applied late to the institution, maybe they decided in July that they wanted to enroll in August or things like that. That's not a great time to be trying to look for grants and scholarships. Right now is a great time to be looking for grants and scholarships for next year, and in thinking about those application deadlines and what students need to do. And so just getting them into understanding that the cycle of financial aid, the cycle of applying for it and things like that. And also, I would say, being willing to serve as a recommender, to write those letters of recommendation to them is amazing. One of the things that I put here is great socialization tool for college and beyond. Think of all of the times throughout either your academic career or your professional career that you have to ask for letters of recommendation or references. This is, I think, a great opportunity to be able to get students to learn the etiquette behind asking for letters of recommendation, and just how they navigate anything like that. And one of the things that Dr. Chavez has put in the chat that is a wonderful information is Stacy Ibarra, who worked for Palo Alto, is now at Alamo Colleges, but is also working for CTN, has been a wizard at finding funding opportunities for Palo Alto students. She is a fantastic resource if you are looking for general nonprofits or other funding mechanisms that are available for your students. We try to make those readily available through the CTN newsletter. If you have stuff that you found that you would like to advertise, you can send that to Deborah, and we would love to have that percolate out, and things like that. Making a specific connection in the financial aid office that you can refer students to. This is something that you'll actually hear me say a lot today. Making specific contacts that you can send students to, so then that way you're not saying, just go to financial aid, just go to the writing center, just go to whatever, that you can make a personal connection and you could say, you know what, why don't you go see my colleague, or whatever their name is, and tell them I sent you, so that hopefully students will feel better connected, or they will feel less lost. If you've ever been in a college financial aid office, especially like around the beginning of the year, it can be really hectic. It can be very overwhelming. I would say even better, if you have a student that you're meeting with during office hours who says that they need help with financial aid, that you can call that connection in the financial aid office and say, can I walk over a student? They're just really lost. And you can make that personal connection and that personal handoff to financial aid. That can really make a difference to students and feeling like they are being heard, they're being validated, and they're getting the information that they need. Something that I know I've seen some of our education and learning frameworks folks do at Palo Alto, for instance, is to invite a financial aid representative to their classroom. So if they are talking about scholarship and grant opportunities, and students are just giving quizzical, confused looks on their faces, then the instructor has said, like, you know what, I'm going to get a financial aid person in here to help talk you through this, to help break it down for you, and to make sure that everyone is getting the same information, the same great information. When I've talked to many of financial aid people over the course of my career, they talk about how so many times scholarships go unawarded because people just they don't think that they're qualified for them, or they're just not applying for them. And we don't want money to be left on the table. One of the things that we are most proud of as a program is that we have students who are graduating with less debt. They're completing with less debt. And we think that this is a big reason why. Also inviting financial aid representatives to important events like Noche de Familia is fantastic as a way to answer questions from the family, or maybe other members of someone's family have questions. Maybe they are coming up through the program, or coming up to the college, they're getting ready to graduate from high school, and they would like a little bit of help with the financial aid process, and they can get that. Also talking to students about work study programs and about how they go about applying for work study positions. If you have students who need to work, and we know from the statistics that I showed earlier, many of our students work, Something that can be helpful to them that they may not even know is an option is finding a position on campus, so that they are able to spend more time on campus, perhaps can feel more connected to the campus, but be closer to their schoolwork, be in a position where they're expected to be students first, and that study part of their position is taken very seriously. The other thing I would say, or the last thing I'll say on this, is talking about the importance of completing classes. And this might be something that faculty may see as the advisors' jobs, and advisors may very well tell students this, but they only see a student once a semester or something like that. The importance of completing classes has many implications for financial aid, whether that be for satisfactory academic progress, meaning that students are remaining in good financial aid standing so that they can get their loans, their grants, etc. And then also being aware of students have a cap on how many times they can withdraw from a course. And we don't want students to do anything that impacts their ability to enroll in the next semester. And so their performance in the class dictates a lot, including their ability to pay for classes. And so that can just be constantly reinforced. Like I said, just another promo for Dr. Jaimes and her tremendous webinar that we did. It is there on our YouTube video. There's Dr. Jaimes waving. She is fantastic. And so, if you haven't seen it before, or it's been a while since you've seen it, I strongly recommend that you watch it as a refresher. Transportation, something that I want to just call your attention to. I looked up, all of our colleges offer free transportation services to our students. And so if you're at the Alamo colleges, there's the U-Pass, Green Pass, Jag Express, DART passes for our colleagues in Dallas College and things like that. Making this information easily accessible to students. For example, putting links to these services in your Blackboard or Canvas shells. Having, if your college creates any sort of promotional flyers for you, having these in your office or make it available in your classes can be really, really helpful. I think that overall, a sort of easy point that can be made is like, well, don't these students get this when they're in orientation? To which I would say, one, we don't know if students have gone to orientation. They may have been so overwhelmed with information the day that they went to orientation that they may not have retained it, or it just didn't stick, and maybe they don't know that these are available to them. And oftentimes these are services that are paid for through their tuition and fees already. And if this is just something that helps them in case they don't have a reliable car, or they have to share a car with their family members or things like that, we know that there is a backup plan that they are already paying for through their tuition and fees. And I think that, something that I remember always sticking with me, I study Hispanic serving institutions. There's constantly this push to say, what does it mean to be Hispanic serving and things like that. And I remember reading an article by an English faculty member who was studying students in El Paso. And he really talked about how one thing that was important for the community college and the university instructors that he interviewed was in recognizing that serving students and being mindful of students' lives meant also knowing that there were students who were crossing the bridge from Juarez to come to El Paso to go to school every day. And some things are just out of students' control. There might be a long line at the bridge coming over that students have no control over. Being in Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas, I know that there are times where accidents happen on I-35 or the bus is late or things like that. And so how can we recognize and acknowledge that there are challenges that are out there that are out of students' controls, and hopefully we can do things to help them by tapping into the resources that our colleges offer. And in also if a bus is late, then how can we talk to students about how they maybe think about an earlier one or whatever. Oh, thank you. I would like to point out, Joanne has put a very, very helpful link in the chat if you were paying attention to that. So food security, access to different social services and things like that. Consider adding a basic needs statement to your syllabus if you don't already have this. And I will offer an example of what a basic needs statement looks like. But community colleges in particular have done an incredible job, in my opinion, of being able to connect students with basic services. I recall being at Palo Alto when the Share Pantry first opened, and the incredible services that they offer. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, all of our colleges offer some food pantry services, for instance. So it's just knowing how students can access that, or what they need to do. I believe it was Dallas College that I looked at, for instance, that said that like there's an intake query form that students have to fill out. They can't just go to the food pantry. So, knowing what sort of steps a student might have to take just to help facilitate that process so they don't show up to a food pantry and not be able to access the food services, for instance. Knowing what health related services are available on campus, whether that be, vaccinations, COVID vaccinations, flu shots, whatever, wellness checks. If a student is sick, that they know that they can see a doctor or nurse practitioner, depending on what the college offers. What sort of sexual health services are available to students if they need those? With disability services, this is one that we do have to be careful about, but I would say if a student mentions to you that they were able to get, maybe they were a 504 student, or they received special ed accommodations while they were in K-12 that they haven't received in their college, in higher education. And then I think one thing that you can just say is you may want to connect with disability services and to see what services or what referral opportunities are available so that you can see a doctor if you don't have the necessary paperwork or whatever it is, so that they can consult with disability services to see how a student can get extra accommodations if they're entitled to them. I said from the outset that the AACC says that 20% of community colleges may have student, or 20% of students may have disabilities. I read research in the developmental education literature that actually says that number may be much higher than we think it is. So, disability services is usually an extremely proactive, supportive space that students can look to for help that they may be entitled to. And then finally, just knowing if your college has assistance for things like childcare, housing. I know that the SHARE program at Palo Alto, for instance, could make referrals for things like dental clinics that provided low-cost dental exams for students and things like that were in the Palo Alto community. So there may be a lot more than we even realize that's available. This is an example of a basic needs statement. It can be modified according to the needs. So like the dean of students office may not be applicable to your respective college. It might be somewhere else. But Sarah Goldrick Rabb is one of the people who has really pushed the basic needs initiatives, really furthered the conversation about food insecurity and housing insecurity among community college students. And so this is a beautiful practice to be able to incorporate into your classes, and just to signal to your students that you will do your best to provide information on any resources that the college offers. Mental health, which we know has been an incredible challenge over the last 2.5 years, even before that, but something that has just been heightened by the pandemic. If you don't know already, I would say know what's available on your campus for students. Oftentimes, the college can is equipped to provide some free short-term services to students, and at that time, if there is the thought or the feeling that students need longer-term care, they can make referrals to community services or things that if students have insurance might be able to be covered by their insurance and things like that. I think that destigmatizing mental health struggles is incredibly important. I tell my students every semester that one of the things that for me has been transformative has been being in regular counseling. And I talk very openly with students about this just so they know that counseling is an incredible thing, that something doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote wrong, that it's an incredible hour that I get to spend with someone working through whatever it is that I'm going through to manage stress, to manage challenges, to learn to be less critical of myself and things like that. And so that is one way that I demonstrate to the students who I work with. Um, that mental health struggles is not something to be ashamed of. And so, one suggestion I can make, if possible, writing in that students can have a free mental health day, an absence from your class where they don't have to tell you what's wrong, but if they need to miss a day, maybe it's midterms and they are just really struggling, maybe whatever, that they can take a day without losing points or figure that out. Um, I think again, if you feel comfortable that you can share with your students about times where you've struggled and how you've coped, that can be really powerful to being able to humanize and to validate what it is that they're going through, and to hopefully see. I hear from a trainer who I do virtual workout classes with, a reminder that you have made it through 100% of your bad days, but sometimes you just need to hear that. And so I think that sharing that with students can be really helpful. If your college, and this is usually done through human resources training, if your college offers mental health training, for example, here at Iowa State University, it's called Green Dot training. But if they offer any of these programs that are really about identifying when someone is in crisis and how you deal with that, I strongly recommend that you go through that. Um, when I worked at UTSA, for instance, the appropriate response, if I had a student in my office who I felt was going through a crisis and was in a situation that I was not equipped to handle, then UTSA's official policy, official, but like sort of covert policy, was that I could call either the counseling center or the university police department, and I could ask that somebody bring a Form 41 to my office. That Form 41, that code was to let the person on the phone know that I had someone in my office who was in crisis and that I needed someone to be sent to my office as soon as possible. And that was just to hopefully be a code so that I wasn't alerting the person who might leave the office, who might leave the situation. And it was just calling in someone who was better equipped to deal with a mental health crisis than I was. And so your college or university or your college may have those policies in place, those practices in place, that you only learn about if you go through these specific trainings. So if you do have those, I encourage you to go through that. If your college offers policies, and this is for advisors as well, if your college offers policies around mental health withdrawals, where students can withdraw from their classes without an impact on their GPA, for a mental health problem or challenge, I strongly suggest that you know what those policies are so you can guide a student through those. And then from just a pedagogical perspective, if you haven't done this before, I strongly recommend it. Consider adding meditations to your classes. I have done this with my classes where for the first 5 minutes of class, we will do a guided meditation. There are different prompts that you can read, that you can get online and that you can read. I think it is able to help calm the mind. It offers a transition between whatever's going on outside the classroom to the transition. I think it just helps center folks to help prepare them for the learning experience or whatever. It's just also, I think, very calming. Um, as I will admit that I think the first time I tried it, I thought that this was hokey, but I was just like, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. And my students responded to it really, really beautifully and asked me to continue doing it for the rest of the semester. So if that's something that you can do, I will be happy to share some guides on meditation, and I will definitely reshare the PowerPoint. Also consider using trauma-informed pedagogical approaches. And this really just has a lot to do with relationship building and classroom management and things like that, but can be very powerful, especially knowing that, I mean, collectively, the news is saying that the last 2.5 years have been very traumatic in many different ways for many of us. And so how can those be incorporated as another way of caring and being attuned to students' needs? Technology, which, I told my husband that there was a Zoom outage this morning, and that felt really freeing for a minute, just to know I was free from Zoom for about an hour. I think that we just have to remind ourselves that we shouldn't assume anything about technology, about students being completely familiar with Blackboard or Canvas or whatever other kind of learning management software or equipment you might use. In the link that I provided earlier that is on the PowerPoint, you can read the story about Maria, the Amarillo College profile student. One of the things that is referenced in the story that I think is really interesting is there's a story about a young woman who was in a math class who wasn't doing well. And the professor during office hours was asking, well, where is your TI 84? And the student had no idea what she was talking about. The student didn't know that a TI 84 was a calculator and that she could have a calculator in classes. And so at that point, the instructor said, well, let's get you a calculator. And that made a big difference. And so I think not taking for granted that students may not always know what we're talking about. They may not always clearly know the technology that they need to be successful or how they troubleshoot and things like that. When I say walking through how to use it in class, I'm not just saying like, here's the shell, you can play with it. I mean, I would say the week before an assignment is due, make sure that you are walking students through how to actually submit the assignment, for instance. Or creating videos or whatever it is where you can walk them through, here's the steps that you follow in order to submit your assignment and to make sure that it's in on time. Having the information that's readily available for how students can get a laptop from your college, how they can check out hotspots, where they do that. Is it at the library or is it somewhere else? Who they can call for troubleshooting and during what hours. Knowing if your campus closes at a certain time at night, for instance, then knowing what the official operating hours of the campus, just in case students need to come to campus to use the network. Knowing if your learning management system has an app that students can download on their phone as another way, as a backup plan for accessing the course content. I just did this at the beginning of the semester where a student's laptop broke. And I said, well, in the meantime, while you are waiting for your new laptop to arrive, maybe download the app and you can check in on discussion questions and stuff like that for the next few days. that can be just a big difference maker because so many of our students have smartphones and can access it through that. I think even with that, email etiquette and how often students should check their emails. If you're communicating with students via email about those grants and scholarship opportunities that we talked about, we want to make sure that they know how that's being communicated with them. Um, and there's also different apps and things like that that you can utilize if you realize that your students are by and large younger crowd and they're not going to check emails. Then maybe having a group me or a Slack or even using like a texting program where you don't have to give out your personal number, but you can get their phone numbers to be able to text them, is a great way to be able to think outside the box and to get information where students will access it. With regards to students' study skills and time management, first, I want to say our learning instructors across the program do a tremendous job of teaching students about time management and study skills. I wrote an article around like one of the most powerful things I've ever seen is how us and their students keep calendars and how they really learn to manage their time and all of the different things that they do within learning frameworks. And so I think that the challenge becomes, how do we reinforce those outside of learning frameworks and really lean into the idea that every class should be a student success course in some way or another. So for faculty and for advisors, I say, I suggest knowing what the academic success services that are offered by the tutoring center, the writing center, whatever those are. The library might offer different, different workshops that are important for students. So how can you advertise those for these other entities? How do you encourage attendance at these different workshops? Do you have specific contacts within the writing center or the tutoring center that you can refer students to? Again, similar to the advice about the financial aid officer, someone that you can connect with, maybe even walk students to and hand them off so that you know that they're in good hands and that they feel supported. And I think for faculty, what might you be able to build into your courses? Maybe that's asking someone from the tutoring center to come by to give a short presentation and to explain what they do, which is great. But I think it's like, how do you minimize outsourcing support to other entities? And so, if you are realizing that there's a broader pattern of students having specific needs around whatever, maybe it's the use of commas in your co-rec INRW class or something like that, then how can you incorporate that and make space so that you are addressing student needs in real time while you have them in your classes? As far as career services go, I just want to be able to say that, we work with students who have so many different academic and career goals. They might be in CTE programs, they might be in transfer majors. And so for faculty, if you are dealing with reluctant learners, especially I think in writing and math, how do you make sure that you are connecting the skills that students are learning in your class with those future professional goals? For those of y'all who don't know, I spent about 5 years teaching nighttime history courses at Northeast Lakeview College, which is one of the Alamo colleges. And, I often got students who would come in and they liked history as entertainment. Like they enjoyed watching the History Channel, but they hated history class. They found it boring. They didn't want to be there. And they were only there because it was required of them to take. And that's fine. But something that I used to tell them is, one, pass my class so that if you really, really hate history class, you never have to take it again. But I would also try to make the content that they needed relevant. The campus that I worked at was less than 5 miles away from a big Air Force base. Many of my students were either in the military themselves or were, they were getting ready to take their ASVAB and to try to test into the military. And so one of the things that I used to share as a personal story was my father telling me that when he was in the Marine Corps, and he was taking his test to go from private to sergeant, there were two tests that he essentially had to take. The first was a general policies, practices, like multiple choice type test. The second was an interview with commanding officers where they were asking him general trivia questions about history, about pop culture, about literature and stuff like that. And he always used to say they were trying to look for a well-rounded person, someone who was informed and aware of the world. And I used to tell my students, like, history classes like mine will help you be well informed, will help you be aware of the world, about history that comes around so many times. And so that was my way of trying to make it relevant. For writing instructors, I encourage you to share with them those news stories that come out regularly about how employers really want folks who can communicate well, who can write. Um, and for advisors, I think that if you are detecting some fear or anxiety from your students, then how can you go ahead and connect them with academic support services ahead of time? If they're just saying, I hate math, I really don't want to have to take this class. Do I really have to take this class? Then you can say, yes, but here are all of these other services that we have. Maybe we have a math skills lab or a tutoring center or a supplemental instruction program or things like that that will help you when you're struggling. So you don't just have to rely on your instructor. There are other services that you can go to for extra help. And one final thing that I want to say is, getting students involved. Earlier, Anna and I were talking about how she just had a meeting with the Ascender Club at South Texas College. We know that students who engage with the campus community have a greater sense of belonging and they do better in their academics. And so that is a big reason why we encourage the formation of the Ascender Club and to get students involved on campus, to get them going to campus events, to explore the range of options. And if students may not always be aware of all of the different options that are available. If they want to meet other people who share their racial ethnic identities or their gender identities, they're an LGBTQ plus club, clubs that are based on majors, on faith communities, political affiliations. Maybe there's someone who is really into fantasy football or Pokemon Go or art or whatever. Or if they're not finding a space that is available to them, then how do you encourage, forming a club at a college is usually not that hard. You might need a few other interested students and a campus sponsor, but how do you help them navigate that so they can help make the community, make the college campus community their own? And so some things I just want to reiterate, regardless of what your position is with our students, I don't want to assume that students have all the information that they need, or they may just need to hear it a second time or a third time or whatever. And so the way that you can know about the services so that you can refer students to them is wonderful. I think that as we are able to empower ourselves with the information, then that just creates so many opportunities for us to continue acting as these institutional agents, as these people who are helping our students to navigate the institution. I will say, when I've been an advisor and even now, I really rely on creating fact sheets or reference videos for students. I will create videos that I use in all of my classes that might be something on self-care, something on time management for students or whatever, that I can reuse in all of my classes. And so with my modules, my class modules within my Canvas shell, I have excuse me, one set of modules that is just on support and services and links like that I create. And so those can be things that you can update periodically, but can hopefully reuse. and is there for students that is actively available to them. And I can tell you, I would just want to acknowledge that I have mentioned all of these different things, and I understand that this may seem overwhelming. This might seem like something that takes a tremendous amount of time and effort, and there's only so many hours in the day, especially if you're teaching multiple classes or you're an advisor who's meeting with dozens of students a day and things like that. And so what I would challenge you to think about is, can you set a goal for maybe one thing, learning about one thing? As a teacher, I will say I really committed several years ago to being really attuned to student pronouns and making sure that I was using students' appropriate pronouns. Spent the better part of a school year committing that to memory so that it became something that I just automatically did. In 2020 and 2021, I said I was going to focus on my teaching on accessibility in my online spaces and learning what I could about accessibility and just focusing on that one thing until it became muscle memory. So maybe if you could just commit to one thing, learning about the food pantry on campus and how to refer students or things like that, that over time, this will just become muscle memory for you as well. And so we have a little bit of time. I don't know if folks are interested. One, if you have questions for me, the chat has been really robust. I'm going to reshare some of the things that, or at least the PowerPoint, and I will reshare some of the stuff that I've talked about. Kimberly, thank you for mentioning the app Calm. That has perhaps some free meditations that are available. I will share one of my guided meditation prompts, but I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for a minute. Oh, I love sleep meditations as well. That is something I started using about 6 months ago, and it has been transformative for me. So are there any questions, or do folks have anything that they want to share? Thank you, Chelsea. Anything that they want to share in relation to maybe ways that they connect students with student services?
I had a question. I'm sorry I was late. I had the wrong link.
No worries.
I was trying to get in to the wrong place. But so the data that you shared at the beginning, is that from a current survey or from older surveys?
Are you talking about the CTN data or?
Right, when you talked about students, the average age, average number of hours, and
so that was older data. That was some of the data that I pulled off of our surveys over the last few years.
Okay, great. So that's fine. Thank you for the link.
You're welcome.
And I know on the text we had the somewhere we had the link for the financial aid one that you recommended.
Yes.
For,
let me pull that up. So the link is in the PowerPoint that I have shared.
Oh,
but
okay.
I can go ahead and put that in the chat as well.
Right.
But that is an extremely informative webinar.
I know that Joan Hymas, when she was leaving, gave us the link to how to get updates on student debt. And somewhere she mentioned that there is a new deadline since the time that she gave our presentation with the new policies that Biden came up. So maybe there's a way that we can, she said something about there is a one-time forgiveness, and I guess there's a waiver that has to be done by a certain time.
So I think if I'm not mistaken, the public service loan forgiveness, that has to be applied for by the end of October.
Right. Well, I think that I think it was something in addition to that, to get
She-
like
she-
the extra money.
She's talking about the new loan forgiveness that President Biden just announced. And so she submitted in the chat a link where you can register so they can send you information when the application is ready.
Mhm.
It's
Okay.
that 10,000 for students who were not receiving Pell Grants, and 20,000 for students who were receiving Pell Grants.
Right,
I think
Right.
that's what she was
I
talking
yeah,
about.
I think
right, right. Okay, yeah, so we'll just kind of keep track of it in case we need to do a follow-up
Mhm.
in the future.
And that's the one, Erin, the one that you
Right.
just submitted.
Yeah.
Right.
I just
Well-
wanted to add something. We just went back fully face to face in all of our Ascender courses. And this is our 4th week, and it just seems like students are having so much time, they're having such a difficult time, not only with the idea of being back in person, but just interacting with other students. And we've been real active about having an orientation, having student leadership meetings. Every Thursday, we have them engaged in something. We're providing, during their lunch break, we have them all on campus. But it's just a different type of student than the student we used to have pre-pandemic. It was really easy to get them engaged and get them excited about the program. And they're just they're like in a little shell.
Mhm.
And that's so they need all the support we used to give them, plus more. And sitting one-to-one with them, talking to them about, you owe me these assignments, what's going on. I've learned about, so difficult. I'm the breadwinner, exactly what you were saying. Like I'm the only one working at my house. And so my priority is helping out at home. To students who tell me, what? There's another folder that I hadn't seen. So like they're just getting so much information that they just need that extra guidance.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's all about cariño and support, and and getting them through the semester. I think because our program, and I think it's at most of the colleges, and I can't speak for all the colleges, but I believe that most of the colleges, it's a 2-semester thing. And I think if we support them through the semester, they'll bloom next semester.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think that when you read articles about just even the ways the pandemic has seemed to impact our brains, and just there was something, I don't know if y'all have access to something called The Conversation, which is like academic research that has been written for a popular audience for dissemination in newspapers. So it's digestible, it's much more easy to read
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But there seems to be a lot coming out about this sort of collective trauma response that we are all having, whether or not we realize it, burnout, and things like that. And something that I also think is that I've noticed, like I'm a pretty social extroverted person, and I feel like my social muscle just gets so much more tired than it used to. And it's almost like I get into social situations and I just
Right.
get on sensory overload very easily.
Yeah.
Or social interactions just fatigue me way more. And I do attribute that to just the last couple of years of
Mhm.
not having as much in-person social interaction with folks. And so I do think that's what you're talking about, Anna, like not even just talking about inflation and all of the other things that we could talk about. I think it is also that students are
Mhm.
just out of practice of sort of existing with each other in person.
Mhm.
Something that I always bring up with other colleagues is that my daughter is a senior this year, and the last time she had a normal year, she was like in 9th grade.
Mhm.
And if you think about all the formation that we go through in those last couple of years of high school, they just haven't had it, and the students who we have as first year students are also having gone through that. They didn't get prom, they didn't get graduation, they didn't get dances, they didn't get dating the same way. I mean, probably they
Right.
did some, but it's just so much formative
Yeah.
stuff got lost, even just being in classroms,
Mhm.
senior pranks. And they're all silly in one way, but in another way, it's just part of how we grow up.
Right.
And so we have to give it to them in some way, kind of,
Mhm.
and I don't know how to do it exactly, but
Right.
I try.
Mhm.
So more icebreakers, maybe? I don't know. It's hard because then we don't want to get them too close to each other in the classroom.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it is everything you said. And I think there also has to be an acknowledgement of what they missed out on, and I think the ability to allow them to mourn that, because
Mhm.
all of those different things. I mean, as someone who's getting ready to go to my like 20th anniversary or 20th high school reunion, like
Mhm.
I'm seeing pictures of my prom, my graduation and stuff like that. And even though I wasn't necessarily someone who
Mhm.
like hit peak in high school, like I can look back at it fondly. So it would be sad to not have those memories, I think.
Right. Well, it kind of stymied their socialization process.
Yeah.
I mean, human development is about going through stages. And when we're in high school, there are certain little milestones that we get used to that kind of contribute to like, oh yeah, I'm next, now it's the next phase. And, I do think that, the icebreakers or the activities or whatever it is that we do, it seems like we have to kind of saturate them with opportunities for social interaction,
Mhm.
because isolation is really the number one factor that has been identified contributing to depression and suicide. So the more isolated a student is, the greater the likelihood
Mhm.
of their just detaching completely.
Yeah.
So it is, a bigger issue. And I think faculty in particular have a greater opportunity to discover challenges through what students write in their journals.
Mhm.
Because with the advisor, you're usually going for very concrete, specific guidance for the most part, academic or career. And I have found just through the reflections that the teachers forward to me that you get so much or so many clues. And I think, in fact, that's one of the sessions that we're going to have at the fall seminar. When things pop up in a journal, what would the teacher do to ensure that the same way that you call somebody with the form, are there cues or clues or steps that we can take that can be somewhat disguised to
Mhm.
get that intervention to them? But it reminds me of our gala. We asked one of our students that won a championship slam poetry to write a poem about celebration, and the whole poem was just so gloomy. Remember, Sophia? And it was basically talking about COVID and depression and being kind of like stuck in a tunnel and missing human interaction and touch. So we should revisit that,
Mhm.
see what we can
Okay.
do.
Okay, so I realize we are 5 minutes over, so I want to be mindful of folks' time, but I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Kimberly, thank you for participating and for sharing the Calm app. I see the commercials for it, but I always forget that exists. So appreciate you.